Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Maria Gonçalves podcast. I'm your host, Maria Gonçalves, and today we have a special guest all the way from Australia. Are you in Sydney, Australia?
No, in Melbourne.
In Melbourne, Australia, and her name is Kerry Alderuccio. Did I say
Yeah.
that right?
Yes, you
Yes.
did. It's a
And
mouthful.
thank you. She is a medium, author, and most importantly, a mom of two. She wrote the book, A Mother's Journey, a story of everlasting love and evidence of life after death, after the passing of her son, Sam. And then she wrote a second book, Demystifying Mediumship, What Makes a Medium. But we are going to start with this book, Harry. So here, I just want our listeners to know that within the book, it is about your son, Sam, who passed away in a horrific car accident with two of his best friends, Raph and Jesse, on May 3rd, 2012. And from that day forward, your life changed forever. So, what inspired you to write this book then?
Thanks, Maria, and thank you for having me on your program as well, I should say. I decided to write A Mother's Journey because after losing Sam, desperately tried to find any books that I could that would help me in moving forward with my grief. And I'd always believed in the afterlife. Always, from the time I was a small child, I always believed that you could never ever die. That was just impossible for me to grasp. And I always wondered how you could stop that little voice inside you, which I now know is the essence of you, your soul. I wanted to find books that would actually explain where Sam was, what had happened after he transitioned from this world to the next. And I couldn't find anything that made any sense to me. I found it really difficult to even find books. So I decided in 2017, so 5 years after Sam's passing, I decided to actually write a book telling my story about how I dealt with my own grief. And grief is a continuous thing, as we know. It never ceases, it just lessens, thankfully, in its intensity. So I decided to write my own book that would actually help other, complete strangers or indeed people that I knew. And it was written as a book of hope, to actually let people know that, um, from my own experience, that yes, that life is a continuous one. So that's why I wrote it.
Well, I actually put like little stickers here
Mm-hmm.
um, because I just wanted to show our viewers a picture of your son Sam and your daughter. There are so many beautiful pictures within this book. I highly recommend people purchase your book. Uh, People that are grieving the loss of children or mediums that are on this journey to offer readings to other moms because you give us such insight into the book. And I'm going to be honest, I read the book and I cried. I felt like I was there with you, and you're so raw with everything in it. And it's such a powerful book. So I highly recommend people read it. I do know, I can't remember, is this book or the other book? You mentioned that you go for a mediumship reading 6 weeks after his passing.
Yes, it's important to know, I think, that back in 2012, even though I'd always believed in the afterlife, I didn't actually know what mediums did. I'd, heard that they exist, but I had no real understanding of what they did. And 6 weeks after the accident, my sister-in-law, Diana, told me that she had been to see a medium. And I'm like, a what? Like what did she do? And she said, well, Sam was there to communicate. And I was like, oh my goodness, I need to find a medium as well. But I decided that I wanted to find one that, not the same one that she went to. I wanted someone that knew absolutely nothing about me. And I don't even know how I found this amazing woman excuse me, but I Googled whatever I Googled, and her name came up. And I just rang and said, "Look, can I make an appointment?" I just told her my first name, not my last name, because the accident had been widely reported on the news, and so on,
Mhm.
the papers. And so I just told her my name, and I went home and I said to my husband, Sergio, and daughter Carla, I said, "I've made a booking to see a medium." And they're the same. They were like, "A what?" We just didn't live in a world of mediums or psychics back then. And I told them that I was going, and Serge said, "Look, both he and Carla had been doing mainstream grief counselling with TAC, which is the Traffic Accident Commission here in Australia. And they found that quite helpful, but I refused to go to that. It just didn't appeal to me. And so we made an agreement that I would go to a session with him in the morning, and he would join me in the afternoon to see the medium. And so I rang the medium back. Lorraine Culross is her name. And I didn't give my husband's name. I just said, "Can I bring my husband?" And she said, "Yes, that's fine." But she said, "But please know that there may be things come out that you may not want him, if you've got any secrets." And I'm like, "My goodness, what is this woman going to be doing?" I really had no concept. So I spoke to Sam, as I do every single day, and I said, "Look, sweetheart, Dad and I are going to see a medium this afternoon at 2 o'clock. I don't know what she does, but can you please be there?" And I gave him the time. I gave him the physical address, because I couldn't understand how he would find me otherwise. And went off to the grief counselling, which, to be honest, I hated it. It just went against everything that I believed in, because it was all about just moving on with life. They've passed away now, and there was no context about, well, or no belief from their perspective about the afterlife. And I get that that's not what they're there for, but I hated the session. And then we went off for our mediumship session, and we arrived at 2 o'clock, and there was this beautiful, ordinary, suburban looking housewife opened the door. Once again, I don't know what I was expecting. And she took us, ushered us in, and we sat down. And she said to me, she said, "The strangest thing has happened all morning." She said, "I have felt the presence of the spirit waiting here for you to arrive." And she said, "I know you're a mother grieving the loss of your son, aged between 18 and 20. And Sam was 19. And that just blew me away. My husband's sitting there, gobsmacked. And so Sam obviously listened to his mum, and he went straight there when I asked him to in the morning. And that was the beginning of a whole new world opening up for me.
So I am curious because I do hear these conversations within mediumship circles, within mediumship mentors, and different mediums have different opinions about how long we should wait before we get a reading, with the reasoning behind it. This the reasoning I always hear is our grief is so deep we don't take in the reading. So how did you find it for yourself, like going in for the reading?
That is a really valid question, and an important one. For me, thankfully, she recorded it, and I know mediums don't like to be recorded. I know when I do readings for people now, I ask them to record it, because you forget so much.
Mhm.
So to give an example of that, Lorraine was talking about, Sam was showing her all of these horses and horseshoes and this big round. She's trying to describe this big round. She's like, "I don't know what it is." And we're sitting there like, "Oh, I don't know." Sam did like horses. I used to take him horse riding. Maybe that's what he's talking about. And this is when you realize how silly you are, because of the emotion that's going on in the reading. About a week later, when I was re-listening to the recording that she mailed to us in a CD form, um, we held Sam's memorial service at a racetrack, at a huge racetrack in Melbourne. That's what he's trying to describe: the big round, the horses, the horseshoes. Like, "I know where you had it, Mum and Dad. I was there." So, and then I just felt so silly, and then I was just felt elated, like, "Oh my goodness, that's just awesome." But I know for some people, 2 years is too soon for them, but
Mhm.
it needs to be, I think, judged on a personal level. For me, it was really important to go that soon because I could feel Sam around me, but I was unsure what I didn't know that I had mediumistic abilities myself at that time. And I know, excuse me, that his passing is what was really the switch for me discovering those. And so for me, going 6 weeks was perfect. And I know I've done readings for people where their loved ones have passed within a week or even sometimes days, and but they're still their loved ones still come through regardless. They're there waiting and wanting to be there.
I think that's beautiful advice. Go at your own pace and when it feels right. I did want to ask you because you said, Lorraine, in this book, there is um, a spirit portrait. Would this have been part of that reading, that
Yes,
original reading?
yes,
Okay, so
and
just
once
bring it closer so our viewers can see on YouTube. Yes.
yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that as well because when we first arrived and after she delivered that mind-blowing news, about Sam being there and his age and everything, um, she then produced that A4 piece of paper and she said, "Does this is this, she said that she just started doing spirit art and she felt compelled to draw that picture and does this make sense to you about whether it's Sam or someone else?" And we're both looking and like, it's not really. And I popped it aside, and she's like, "That's fine. Something might crop up later." And
Mhm.
once again, me feeling ridiculous at home. A few weeks later, we had a very old Victorian house back then, and that
Yeah.
is a tiny little photograph of Sam as a baby that was on
Yeah.
a mantelpiece in our bedroom. And when I looked at that and I got the picture out, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, it's almost that she's drawn it from that." And,
Yes.
yeah, and I know now that, our loved ones in the spirit world can, they can send images to the medium of, how they looked at any time in their life, whether it was as a baby or, 10-year-old or, through adulthood, however. And so she'd actually captured that photo, yeah.
It's a beautiful photo. So I wanted to talk about signs from spirit, signs from Sam, different signs that he gives you, because at one point, you and your husband decided to sell the home that Sam used to live in and then to move somewhere else. So if you could share that story with everybody.
Yes, of course. What was happening, as I said, we lived in this beautiful big old Victorian house in a suburb called Flemington here in Melbourne. And immediately after Sam's passing, Sam had an enormous friendship base, like massive. There were 1,000 people at his funeral, which is unbelievable for someone who was 19 years old. And so his mates would always ring us or text and say, "Can we come over and visit?" This went on for months and months after Sam passed away. And in our kitchen dining area, we had two pendant lights and five wall sconces around the walls. And this would only ever happen on the nights that his mates were coming. And it was winter in Australia. We've got obviously the reverse seasons. And I'd put the lights on, preparing for darkness. And once again, only on the nights that his friends were coming, one, two, or three of those light globes in that area would all blow. And it was just the most amazing sign for me that Sam knows, what we're doing. And that went on. I think we went through 30 to 40 light globes within a 5 month period during that time. So it was absolutely amazing. But Sam has also been prolific, and I know this sounds whimsical, and I know a lot of people receive feathers as well, but Sam has been amazing with sending feathers to us on a very, very regular basis, but only really on the ones that really hit home when you see them in the most unusual of places, or it's on a day that's a birthday or an anniversary, or just when you're feeling a bit down. And one, I've had them just, I see them falling from the sky and they'll land in my hand. And I've had that happen in Spain when I was there with our daughter Carla, and we were reminiscing about Sam. We're in a town, one of the walled cities. The name of it's just gone out of my mind at the moment. And we're talking about the time that we'd been there with Sam when he was about 9 or 10 years old. And just as I'm talking about him, I saw one falling and it landed in my hand. So, yeah, just magical things like that.
Oh, that's precious. I love
Yeah,
that. You
yeah.
have a story in here about your cat, and Sam would wake the cat up at 3 in the morning.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. Just leading into that story, I need to go back a little bit. When Sam was about 17 or maybe 18, he said to me, he used to work part-time. He was a student, he was at high school, and he was about to go to university. Um, he would have gone to university if it had been for the accident. And he said to me, Mum, have you ever seen the movie Ghost? And I'm like, oh, I have. And he's like, did you like it? I said, I loved it. And he said, do you want to watch it with me? And I thought, yeah, that's fine. That's a bit odd, but that was fine. So he brought it home. He did his, little after school shift at the video shop and bought the DVD, as it was back then, bought that home. And I don't know where Serge or Carla were, but they weren't there. And it was just, so Sam and I put it on and we watched it. And he loved it. And he was blown away by the possibility, I think, of an afterlife. And of course, Whoopi Goldberg is a medium in that show. And that was the only sort of context I had about mediums. Also, in that movie, there's a scene where Patrick Swayze, as a ghost or as a spirit, is trying to get the attention of the cat because there's an intruder in the house, and he's trying to get the cat's attention to then
Yes.
alert his partner. And he managed to do that, and the cat then ended up scratching the intruder. So it was all very interesting. Now, fast forwarding, after we'd moved to our new house, a friend of mine, by this stage, I had started my own mediumship development by sitting with mediums and so on. And a friend of mine, who was my teacher at the time, um, it's Kristen, she rang me and said, Kerry, I just need to tell you, she said, I had Sam come to me this morning. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she said, yep, she said, I could see him. He was sprawled out on a couch wearing boxer shorts and a t-shirt. And that was his uniform when there was no one else, no visitors or anything. That's what he would be wearing. And she said, he's sprawled out on this couch and there's a cat at the end of the couch and he's trying to get its attention. And I'm like, oh, wow. Because at that time, she's now since passed over as well, but it was Carla's cat called Megan. And Megan literally used to live on the end of this L-shaped couch. That was where her little bed was. So that blew me away that Kristen's telling me this, because Megan did indeed live there. And she said, now, there's obviously something to this, Kerry, because I was telling her how during the night, that cat would often get up and run around frantically just for a few seconds and then go back to bed and be silent. So she said, next time the cat does that, check out what time it is. So sure enough, go to bed that night. And our bedroom is a mezzanine. So it's like a loft. And so it's an open wall. So the cat gets up, runs around frantically. I immediately get out of bed, go into the bathroom, look at the clock, a digital clock, and it's 3:05, 3rd of the 5th, because we do our dates opposite to you guys. So it was the 3rd of the 5th, the 3rd of May, and that was the day that the date Sam passed. So I knew that was just him confirming, yes, Mum, that's me, and I am getting the cat's attention, which was amazing.
I love that story. And then there is a story also about how you came to purchase your next home, if you could share that story.
Yes. Now, we did everything as a family, probably the opposite way of what most people do or what you're advised to do. You hear, people saying, don't move for 2 years, don't do this, don't do that. And that's fine if you're wired that way, that you just kind of do as you're told almost.
Mhm.
Whereas we were like, no, we are doing what feels right for us as a family. So we spoke to Carla and, are you okay if we sell the family home? Because it wasn't a family home anymore without all of us being present in the living. So she's like, Mum, Dad, you do whatever you like. And by this stage, Carla, Sam passed away just before her 21st birthday. So by this stage, she's 21. She actually went to live in Amsterdam with her boyfriend, who's now her husband as of last year. So Paul, he was a university student, so he was doing a placement over there. So Carla went to live in Amsterdam with him. We're like, you do whatever you like, whatever makes you happy. So we put our house on the market and sold it within 6 months of Sam's accident. And we had, a 3-month settlement time. So in that time, I went overseas and visited Carla over there and Paul and so on, and came back. And then we moved into our current home, which is in North Fitzroy. It's an inner city suburb of Melbourne. And we live opposite a beautiful park called the Edinburgh Gardens. And one night we were sitting on the balcony, and we bought this house as a brand new house that no one had ever lived here before. It was built the same year that Sam passed in 2012. So we're sitting up on our balcony. It was hot. We're having a beer outside with a friend. And, when you've got the lights on, everyone can see you, but you can't sort of see out into the darkness. But
Yes.
I could hear this voice calling, Kerry, Serge. And I'm looking out. I'm like, who is it? And he said, it's Caulfield. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. And Caulfield was one of Sam's really good friends. And they'd been to Thailand together earlier that year. We're great travelers, and the kids, traveled all the time as well. So Caulfield came up and he handed him a beer, and he's sitting up there and he's just looking around. He's going, I can't believe that you bought this house. And I'm like, why? He said, you could have lived anywhere in Melbourne and you've bought this one. And I'm like, Caulfield, why? And Sam and Caulfield and Raf, and indeed Jessie actually, who passed with Sam, they're all a bit naughty as teenagers, and they loved their graffiti, which I know is bad, really bad, and they would do tagging and stuff. And we actually didn't realize this until Sam's memorial service, when it came out with different stories that the kids were telling, and we're like, oh my God. Anyway, so Caulfield said to us, he said, Kerry, the year, obviously earlier in 2012, he said, Raf, Sam and I, we were around this area and we tagged this entire building, and we all signed our tags underneath while it was being built, so in the bones of the building. And he said, and you guys have bought that exact property. So it was almost like Sam had found us our new home and he'd signed off on it, and we ended up buying it. And we had no idea that had happened until he told us. And then once I knew that, and I, by this stage, had found out his tag name, one of the mornings I'm catching, I think it was my first time going into the city, I'm downstairs there. The tram literally stops outside our place. And I'm looking at the tram stop, and up the tram stop is Clerk, which was his tag. He'd signed the tram stop as well. And I took a photo, and I've never, you shouldn't be proud of your child tagging anything, but I'm like, that is just awesome. It's like he chose where we were going to live. And we'd been in our other house for 20 years.
That photo is not in this book, is it?
I think it is somewhere.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it should be. I'm sure I'll keep looking.
I think I did see something about graffiti. I think so.
So I'll keep looking.
I see the house. So for Sam.
Oh, sorry, there it is.
Oh, you found it. What page is that on?
Page 122. So it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Let me see. Oh, there it is. You're right. Let me just bring it closer to the screen so people can see that.
Yeah.
And there you go. That's a signature.
Yeah. His tag note. Yeah. So
his tag. I love it. It's beautiful. In this book, you write about, I'm trying to remember the story right now because I forgot to write it down, and it's just coming to my awareness, about a young boy that you meet whose mom passed away to cancer earlier. These two young boys that you end up not adopting them, but I'm trying to remember where this story is. Oh, because that just came to my awareness right
Oh,
now.
the English boys. Yes,
Yes.
yes. In 2012, we were part owners of a Mexican restaurant in Hardware Lane in the city called Amigos, and that was another of Sam's part-time jobs. He gave up the video shop and worked with us at Amigos. And Hardware Lane is a really busy, pumping old brick laneway where at night time it's all just restaurants and with all the awnings and so on. And I used to be the maitre d' of our restaurant. And across, so you've just got people lined up. There's only like, a very small gap where all the pedestrians walk through, and all of the tables and chairs are outside. It's really, really cool. And the restaurant opposite, there were two young English boys that worked over there. And of
Mhm.
course, you talk to all of them, and I love young people, and they used to gravitate to our restaurant all the time. And I used to have drinks with them up in our tequila bar at night when I finished work, and I just love being around them. And these beautiful boys, they had met Sam a couple of times, when he did
Mhm.
shifts, and I remember vividly. They actually came to his memorial service as well, which was so lovely. And they bought themselves new white shirts to wear because I only ever had t-shirts and things. They were backpackers from the UK. And excuse me, it actually happened the night before Sam's accident. One of the boys, his mum had passed away with cancer. The boy's name was Matt. And he was telling me how much he missed his mum, and that's why he loved being with me, because it
Mhm.
was kind of gave him that feeling of, being a mother. And I remember having a deep and meaningful conversation with him that night. And then the next day, I lose my son. And it was like then he sort of stepped up as being just, very, very kind to me, as was his friend Sebastian, who worked there as well. And when the boys had to go back to England, they hadn't travelled together. They just met one another out here and then went back to England and went their separate ways. But I started going back to England every year. I studied my mediumship at Arthur Findlay College there. And I remember the first time I was going back in that direction, that was when I went over to Amsterdam to visit Carla and Paul. And Sebastian was back in England, and he'd said to me, if ever you come over this way, I want you to come and visit because I want you to meet my mother, because I know that you two will get along so well. And so I told him that I was going to be in Europe with Carla. And so we all decided to meet up in Belgium, in Brussels, and which we did. And so I had this wonderful relationship with Seb, met his mum, Brigitte, and she and I have now become the best of friends. And so for the last 12 years, I've been catching up with her either in Europe or somewhere in the UK, and I'll be with them again this June when I'm over there. And I still see Sebastian every year. Unfortunately, I don't see Matt. He's sort of drifted off, so I'm not sure where he is. But I see Seb and his now partner and children, and it's just beautiful. And that's all through those relationships that are an
Yeah.
extension of having Sam. Yeah.
They are, oh, I feel like I'm getting teary-eyed. The stories you share in there are, it's just so heartfelt. And I'm thinking, wow, look, for this young boy to find you, how beautiful
Yes.
is that
Yeah.
story?
Yeah. And both of those boys, one missed his mum because she was in spirit, and the other because she simply wasn't present. But for me to be able to sort of be there, surrogate mum, I love that.
Yeah. Oh, I cried when I read that in the book. I was like, oh, um,
Yeah.
and then in the book, after Sam's passing, you talk about his t-shirt collection
Oh, yeah.
because he had so many t-shirts. Do you want to share with people what you did with his
Yeah.
shirts?
I think this is what we decided to do. And as I said before, we did a lot of things quite differently to a lot of people.
Hmm.
Um, Sam, he loved t-shirts. He loved, he was a real collector, but he never parted with anything. So after he passed, I was going through his wardrobe, and oh my God, it was just frightening in there. And he had so many t-shirts. Some of them were tiny little things that, like, but he just hadn't, ever culled them. And he prevented me from culling them as he gotten older. So that was fine. I was fine with that, and respected his wishes for me not to be in his wardrobe. But what I did, I washed them all and I gave them out to his mates, because these beautiful friends, boys and girls, would continually come to our house, as I mentioned earlier. And so I gave all of the larger ones to his friends, and they were like, oh, and they just, yeah, treasure them. So I really recommend to other parents that are wondering what to do with their children's things like t-shirts and things like that. Just wash them and give them to their friends, because they love having them.
Yeah, they do.
And that's what I did.
And then within the book, you talk about birthdays and anniversaries. So if you could share, after his passing, you had a birthday party for him, correct?
We did. We still
Yeah.
do. We have a birthday party every single year. We just had one in March, and instead of it getting smaller, it's actually getting bigger every year. And
Oh,
now they come along with their husbands and wives and children and dogs, and we just go to a local pub and we all get together, and it's absolutely beautiful. And we held a 21st birthday party for Sam. I'm not sure in Canada if when you turn 21, is that a big celebration
it's a
there?
big deal. Yes.
Yeah, for some countries it's 18, but 21's the really big one here. And so we wanted to have a 21st birthday for Sam. So we hired a room at a hotel in North Melbourne, the Levison Hotel there, and we invited all of Sam's mates. And I really wanted to do something special for them, and to give back something. So one of Sam's friends, a boy called Charlie Vaughan, had done a magnificent, um, and this was a magnificent piece of art. It wasn't just tagging. It was a beautiful um, mural that he had done on the back of another mate's garage. So Lorenzo, everyone knows Lorenzo here in Melbourne, and it was done on the back of Lorenzo's garage where he lives with his mum. And it was beautiful. And we had it professionally photographed, or the boys did actually. Sam's mates had it photographed. And then we had it put onto a t-shirt, and it said Da Vinci, which was a nickname that Sam always had from his years at Wesley College here in Melbourne, and Lorenzo had actually given him the nickname Da Vinci. So that's what it says. And so we had these black T-shirts made with the screen printing on the front, and it was all done. I wanted to also do something else and it was all very difficult for me to get my head around it. But I remember going down to the office works here, which I guess you have something similar there, where and anything to do with office or photocopying or all of that stuff, you go
Oh,
there.
yes.
Yeah. And so I went down there with a memory stick and some photos, and I went in, and I remember just being so overwhelmed that I walked out in tears, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I put the key in the ignition. And then it was like this, something happened. And it was just like, take that. It was almost like, take that key out of the ignition. I turned the car off and I marched back into that shop. I don't know. I know it was Sam, but it was just the most incredible feeling. And I went over to the stationery department and I bought stationery, and I wrote a letter to him in the store, and I wrote it as if he'd written it to his friends. And then I took it over and had photocopies made, and then the guy had to guillotine them in half because it was too big. And I remember he was obviously reading it and thinking, oh my God. And I'm sort of standing there in tears, and he couldn't wait to get rid of me. It's like, here we are, madam. And then I marched off to the photographic section and had, I don't know how many, 200 photos done as well. And also more tears. And they're probably thinking, oh, this poor woman, just get her out of the shop, not knowing what my issue was. and I ended up then coming home and rolling all these T-shirts up and putting Sam's note and his photo, tied it up with string, and we gave all of the kids one of those.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's you have that in the book, that
I
a
do.
picture. I was
I
just
do.
flipping through the book to see if I could
Actually, here's
find
a
it.
photo. Here's a photo of Charlie, another beautiful friend, and my husband Serge with a broken arm there from a cycling accident. But they've got their Da Vinci T-shirts on.
Oh, I
Um,
love it.
yeah, and what happened at the 21st birthday? The kids
Oh,
would
I
all
found
just
it.
yeah, yeah.
There you
That's it.
go. Nice
Yeah.
and close up for people to see.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I wrote, I put the date on it and I wrote, "My gift from me to you, wear it with a smile and remember our happy times together. See you again on the flip side. Love, Sam. DV."
Oh, it's so precious. I love that. So you also talk about doing a celebration for all the boys that passed. So you do the anniversary and then the birthday.
We just did the anniversary for the first year as a group.
Oh, for the
Um,
first year. Okay.
the first year, yeah. So we did have a big private picnic, and there was actually, because of the fire, there was the car accident, and the car had hit a tree, and somehow the back of it had burst into flames, and so there was a tree there that was burnt, and so the council removed it, and on the 1 year anniversary, a new tree was planted. So we all went up for the tree planting, and the three families all released balloons, a balloon for each of our boys. And so then we had, back to a pub that night. But we don't do that every year now, but we just did it the once. But it was a really lovely coming together. Yeah,
Oh, that is
because
beautiful.
so many of the kids, and they were kids then, they were teenagers, they knew all three boys. Some might have just known one or the other or
Mhm.
two of them, but many of them knew all three. And so it was, heartbreaking for them as well. So we've always tried to be very inclusive with bringing those children, and keeping them, they're now adults, and but keeping them in our lives. And I know the other families have done similar, yeah, but in their own way.
And you weave community. That's what I take from this book with all the boys, with everybody, with family, extended family. Is just so beautiful. Uh, in here, you write this. Let's talk about that dreaded question. You write like closer to the end. How many children do you have?
Mm,
So do you want to talk about that? Because I think that's such an important
yeah.
question because people don't know, like me, like, do we ask, don't we ask?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an important question, and it was one that I was dreading because I knew what my answer wanted to be, but I wasn't sure that I could then follow up with with why. And so, but then I decided, no, I'm just going to say I'm a mother of two, and so I always say yes. We have two children, Carla and Sam, but tragically, Sam passed in a car accident when he was 19, and that's what I say. And for some people, I know that's like, oh my God, that's way too much information. For
Mhm.
others, it's like, thank you, So, but you have to. It just didn't feel right to say we have one, because we don't. We have two.
Yeah.
And once again, that's really a personal thing. If I think that if parents can't, if they're not comfortable with then having to say anymore, then just do what feels right for them. But for us, we always say two, because we have two.
And within this book, I want to say there's so many beautiful memories about Sam. And I feel like when I read the book, I really got to know your family because there's
Yeah,
so
a lot
many
of people say that.
pictures.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, there's so many pictures, and I can't say it enough. I highly recommend people get your book. I ordered it. It came from Australia to Canada.
Wow, because you can order it. It can be ordered both of my books can be ordered anywhere in the world.
They can.
Um, Yeah. So, but I'm surprised that it wasn't printed in America and sent.
It
Yeah.
came all the way from Australia, which
Oh,
I love. And in time for this interview, and now I'm going to go off to your next book.
yes.
So, Demystifying Mediumship. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, as I said before, the trigger for finding my own mediumship was Sam's passing. So, and because I'd never been in that world of, mediums, psychics, healers, and so on ever before, all of a sudden, as a 53-year-old or 54, I think, when I started um, that journey, people are like, that's how, like, or that's just plain weird, or some people really embraced it, and others thought, well, you don't, they would say to me, you don't look like a medium. And, I'm thinking, well, what? I was the same when I first met Lorraine, and I've shared Lorraine's story in this book as well. But I realized that we don't, mediums are just normal people that just have an ability. That's the only thing. It's just a special ability, and it's the most beautiful ability to have. And so I thought, well, I'm going to, over the course of the years, I've got to know so many mediums now, and I go to that college, Arthur Findlay College in the UK, every single year for 2 weeks at a time. And so I've got to meet literally hundreds of mediums now from all around the world. And so I thought, I'm going to invite 17 of them, but I only wanted to ask people who I knew personally, that I had a connection with. And so I decided to invite 17 mediums, men and women, a variety of ages. I think Andre was the youngest. He was about 33 when he shared his story. And I think the oldest was approaching 70-ish. And every age in the middle. And they're from 5 different countries where they currently live, but there's more countries there because they've heralded from the other places. And I invited them to share their own personal journeys on how they discovered their mediumship, what they've done with it, just share their own stories. So I've written 17 mini biographies, as if and I recorded them, or some of them did write a lot of things themselves, and then we've tweaked it all. But most of them, it's just from me transcribing our conversations. Yeah. And I wrote it to demystify mediumship, to normalize it.
There's a lot of powerful stories in here, a lot of stories where people share a lot of deep personal stuff in there.
I was blown
I
away by
loved it.
how personal. Yeah, there's stories of alcoholism and drugs use, breakdowns. One woman was trapped in the Jehovah Witness church for 18 years. There's stories of losing children, parents, and then there's a couple of the mediums there. It was sort of a normal progression for them to become mediums, but that was very rare in the 17. There's only a couple. And there's a lot of a lot of heartache. But I was so thrilled that everyone was so openly honest with me, and they didn't gloss over things that was just a warts and all. This is my story, and I was shocked. So I'm thinking, wow, thank you for being so honest. And there's about 7 of the tutors from Arthur Findlay College in there as well. Um, and the beautiful artwork on the front is the woman who did that. Her story is in here as well, Anne Marie Bond, and she's a London medium who's now a tutor at the college. And they are all actually, it's spirit art paintings that she has done, and that will make more sense when you read her mini biography as well. That's in there.
I love spirit art. I don't do it, but I'm so impressed by others that are able to do it. I'm in
It's
awe because it's
amazing.
like, wow, that's amazing. So do you feel like you were always a medium, or did you only feel that after the passing of your son to go explore? Like, did you have mediumistic abilities when you were a young child?
I realize now that I actually did, but I didn't know what they were. I would see spirit, I would feel spirit around me, I would feel them sit, the bed depressing. I'd see the shadows moving around in my room, but it never frightened me. I just thought it was completely normal. But I've also, I didn't ever, it was just sort of normal for me. But it never went any more than just seeing those sorts of shadows. But I was always very, very psychic. So I would just know when things were going to happen, or I just know stuff about people. Very intuitive when it came to the energy of different people, as
Mhm.
to why I'm drawn towards them, or actually repelled by them. Yeah, and everything in between. But I would just know stuff. Yeah. And I actually had a premonition the night before the accident. I came home from the restaurant and late as always, and went to bed. And so it was the 2nd of May, when I got home, and had a really sleepless, worrying night, and it was just awful. And I had this dream that I was being led out of Hardware Lane, where the restaurant was, by the police. But I was in tears, but I didn't know why. And when I woke up the next morning, I was really feeling so flat. And that's not like me at all. I'm always very much glass half full. And it really worried me. And then the date occurred to me that it was the 3rd of May. Now, when I was 18, I tragically lost my father in a workplace accident, on the 3rd of May. And
Oh,
because it was a workplace accident, the police were involved. So, and they came to tell me at my workplace at that time that my father had died. So I put it down to the date. But what it did do, Sam was staying at a friend's place that night. With Raf was with him as well. And then we found out later that Jesse had arrived there, and we think that Sam was driving them to the station because it was raining. But anyway, what it made me do, because of that horrible feeling and the police and everything, I actually rang Sam as I was walking back to catch the tram into the city, from Flemington. And we had a great chat as always. And he told me he was doing that day, and all the rest, picking up his cousins that night. He was actually staying over there because their mum and dad were in America, and Carla and Sam were doing tag teaming, staying with the teenage cousins. And that was my last conversation. And 2 hours later, he was gone. But that premonition was exactly what happened. The police led me away in tears from Hardware Lane. So, so definitely those strong um, psychic abilities have always been there,
Do
and
you
now mediumship. Yeah.
do you still have premonitions about other things or
Yeah, I
no?
don't like it when I get them, to be honest, because they're usually right, but not as much. But I do realize that if I am to have a premonition, it's going to be about something serious.
Okay, because in the book you talk about dreams, right?
Yeah.
So that premonition was in a dream then?
It was in a dream, but I welcome dream visits as opposed to premonitions. So,
Okay.
just for those listening, dream visits, when your loved ones appear in your dreams, they are actually visiting you. And that's why you remember it so vividly the next morning. Whereas you can have the most crazy, vivid dream, and you wake up and like, wow, that was amazing. But you can't actually tell anyone what happened because it was all in your imagination. But when you actually have a visit from a loved one during the dream state, that's when you remember it. The next morning, it was like, oh my goodness, and you remember every part of it because it actually took place.
And now within your mediumship abilities, how does that work for you? How does spirit come through to you?
So I'm very clairvoyant, so I see a lot, very much. I feel the emotions, so a lot of clairsentience. I don't have any sense of smell, because I've had nasal polyps and they've been removed, but they've come back. So I can't actually smell anything. So when I'm doing readings, I don't get scents like a lot of people do. And I just have a real knowing. Occasionally I hear, so there's a little bit of clairaudience. But when I'm doing my readings, it's very much through what I see, what I feel, what I just sense or know, and the occasional word. But I do now work, and I have done for the last 9 years, work professionally as a medium as well.
So in your book, you talk about going off to mediumship circles to develop, and
Yeah.
that your husband Sergio and Carla are kind of like, "Where's mom going?" So
Yeah.
how are they now with it? Do they know where you
Well,
went?
luckily, they have both been very patient. When I first started, when I first went to see Lorraine Colros, that was the opening, and I hopped in the car with Serge when we went home. I said to him, "What would you say, pardon me, if I came home and told you what just happened just now?" Because during that reading, Sam's there, my dad's there, his mum's there. It was awesome. And he said, "Well, I wouldn't have believed you because it's just too crazy." And he said, "I probably would have wanted to have you certified because it's just impossible." But he said, "But I cannot deny what just happened." He said, "I don't understand it for a second, but I cannot deny what I just witnessed." So I had him on board. So that was great. And then once again, I resorted to Google, have no idea what I Googled. And this other lady's name came up, Tony Riley. And Tony, I've written her story in this book as well.
Yes.
And excuse me, Tony was amazing. And I joined her development group, a psychic development group, not a mediumship. So for listeners who don't know, there is a psychic is working, doing readings for the living and mediumship readings for those who have crossed over. So it was a psychic development class. And I loved it. And I learned meditation straight away. I could do it. It was also a therapeutic class for me. I was crying every single week with these complete strangers, but they were so beautiful. And it was just such a healing process for me. And then I would start picking up tarot cards and angel cards, and I could do readings for the girls, but they were all psychic readings. And I remember saying to Tony after a year, I said, "Look, you're a medium as well, aren't you?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, where do you learn to do that stuff?" And she's like, "Well, Arthur Findlay College." And I'm like, "Great, I'll go there. I'll go home, make an appointment." And she said, "But Kerry, it's not in Australia, it's actually in England." And I'm like, "Oh, even better." So I'm going there. So, and I did. I started going in the beginning of February, March 2020, 2015. And I went with a girlfriend who I met, Sandra Uzururu. I met her when we were 4 years old at kindergarten. And we went to primary school together, and we had not caught up from the age of 12. But through the magic of Facebook, I found out that she was actually studying mediumship. By this stage, bear in mind, we are women in our 50s back then. And she was studying mediumship and with Lisa, oh gosh, the English medium, Lisa. She's
Lisa
really wonderful.
Williams?
Yes. So she
Okay.
was doing that remotely with Lisa. And I wrote and said, "Well, I'm doing mediumship as well, and I'm about to go to Arthur Findlay College." And she wrote back and said, "Do you want company?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" And normally I don't travel or share rooms or anything like that. I'm like, "Yep, this feels right. I'm going to do it." And I remember then making the big announcement to Carla and Serge. Um, they were already like, "Okay, so she's going to these development circles, have no idea what she does there, but she seems happy when she comes home." And then I made the big announcement, "I'm off to the United Kingdom to go to this college for 2 weeks." And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "It's fine. I'm going with Sandra." And they're like, "Who's Sandra?" And I said, "Oh, she was my kindergarten friend and from primary school." And they're both like, "So you haven't seen her since you're 12?" I'm like, "No, that's right. I haven't. It'll be fine." And we caught up once. She came from Sydney to Melbourne for a dinner, and we just hit it off. By this stage, we'd already booked our trip. And we had the most awesome time. And I've been going back ever since. So I just trust my gut that this will all work out. It will work out, and it did work out. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. I went to the UK for a weekend course. I remember telling my friends, and they're like, "Where are you going again?" And then I remember people trying to talk me out of it, and I was just like, "I'm going." I had one friend was like, "Yeah, go." But what was interesting is once I got to the UK, I forgot the time change. So I call
Oh,
her on my cell phone. I'm like, I'm in the middle of nowhere because I got stopped off, I guess it's Staten, the train station, and I
uh,
didn't know where I was going. And I
Stansted.
was,
Yeah.
And I was like, stay on the phone. I don't know where I am until I find like Arthur Finley called. I think it was like 3 in the morning here in Canada time because it was early, but it is a magical place. I will say that.
It is awesome. And I mean, I'm going 8th of June, I think I start. Serge and I leave at the end of May next month, and we'll have a few days in London together. And he's a crazy cyclist, so he's going riding in Switzerland and so on. And then I'll stay in London. I've got another girlfriend coming over from Singapore who's a medium, and she's an expat from Sydney, Danny Vandervelde. And she and I, this will be our third year in a row of doing the same classes, but we just get our own rooms, and we have the most awesome time there. And I think this is my week. I don't know, it's about my ninth trip. And I do 2 weeks at a time. So yeah,
Oh,
I love
wow.
it.
And it brings together the most incredible mediums. I've met like so many amazing mediums
Oh yeah.
from around the world, and I'm
Yep.
still connected to many of them on Facebook, just like you said. It's all about
Yes,
Facebook to stay
exactly. And you had
connected.
Christine Morgan on last week, I think it was, and
Yes.
that's a beautiful interview. Yeah, I still study now with Christine via Zoom. She's in Sydney. So yeah, I continue my weekly fix of mediumship, and I'll continue studying for the rest of my life. You know, it's something you never get to the end of. You just enjoy the journey of it, and I love it. And of course, Adam Berry, who you've also interviewed, is a good friend, and
Yes.
he's in Demystifying Mediumship. And yeah, I've just met the most amazing people through my mediumship and through my writing. It's amazing.
Absolutely. I met Christine Morgan a few years ago on Zoom because when everything went on Zoom, because at one point I've always wanted to go to Arthur Finley. I just couldn't afford to go back then. And then
Yeah,
when everything went online, I finally had access to these incredible mentors and the mini workshops and courses. And it's been amazing. I feel like Zoom, Skype, whatever people were using, it brought a huge global community of mediums, intuitives, healers together, right? It's so
absolutely.
beautiful.
And they all teach you in the same way, and that's what I love about it. So they teach in a very natural way. They don't try and make, there's no witchy woo rubbish, which I cannot tolerate. It's all very natural, and it's just a very grounded way of teaching. And they all teach you the same way. So you're not going to go to another class and they try and change everything that you've already learned. It's consistent, and that's what I love about it.
Yes. So I have a question, one last question for people that are going on their mediumship journey for the first time. What do you recommend?
um, to start your development from day one. Don't go off and, do things by yourself, like meditation and stuff like that. And just being, sitting with yourself. Definitely do all of those things. But when it comes time that you're prepared to actually join a group, join a development group that is run by a medium who is well trained, that knows exactly what they're doing, that they've got runs on the board, and that they don't take you off on a ridiculous pathway of scary stuff of, having to protect and all of this stuff that's totally irrelevant and not true. Just learn with someone that actually knows what they're talking about. And I would only be going to people who tutors from the college, or people who have had many years of training from tutors at that college, Arthur Findlay.
I find within my own mediumship in the beginning, because you don't know what you don't know, right? So I
Yes,
found a lot of fear-based teachers, and
yes,
which I didn't like. And that is another reason I created this podcast. I've always wanted to create a podcast for years, but too afraid to be seen or speak. And here I am now. Now I'm okay. But and it was just to help people get rid of that fear because
yes.
depending on our belief systems, our cultures, all of that stuff, there's a lot of fear. And bringing on, also my intention was bringing on incredible mediums, psychics, tutors from around the world so people can listen and relate and get rid of the fear.
There's nothing to fear. I wish that message would get out. There is nothing to fear from the spirit world. You know, there is nothing to fear at all. Either with making communications yourself on a one-to-one basis, which I believe everyone can do. It's just most people dismiss, or they just completely miss what's they're expecting something really groundbreaking, and they don't understand that it's just going to be the most subtle form of just a knowing that, oh, there's someone near me or someone close, or I'm feeling better now just through thinking about them or whatever, because that is often when they are making a communication themselves, but they're expecting something groundbreaking. And you know, and it's never going to be like that. It's just always going to be something really subtle. But I wish more people would realize that they can have those little beautiful times with their loved ones themselves.
That
And
is
that's what I
beautiful.
started doing with Sam. And I was having those daily. And that's why I need to, like, okay, am I just making this stuff up, or is something else happening? And that's why I went to see Lorraine. And then as an end result of that, then I started the development, and then, you know, it just roller coasted from there.
Oh, you know what? I want to say thank you so much for sharing your son, Sam, and all the beautiful stories, your journey, and both your books. So, for our listeners and our viewers, her first book is A Mother's Journey, A Story of Everlasting Love and Evidence, Life After Death. There's that one. And you have so many beautiful pictures in there and so many beautiful memories in there. So, again, I highly recommend you purchase this book and this one too. And this one again, it has 17 mediums in there, some tutors. I love the stories in here, and they're also different. And every story is unique, healing, and powerful. And it also makes us feel like we're not alone.
Yeah, and we're not.
Oh,
And yeah, and I think that title says it all, demystifying mediumship. You know, take all the mystery out of it, and just, you know, it is a mainstream, in my view, form of communication with the spirit world. And you know, imagine being in the spirit world and your loved ones not even attempting to communicate with you. I think that would be so tragic. So I
yeah.
always like to look at it from their perspective and honor them by having mediumship readings.
Absolutely. And I also want to let our listeners know I will have all of Carrie's contact information, links to purchasing these books. And thank you so much again, Carrie, for spending the evening with me. And it is your morning in Australia.
Is. Thank you, Maria, for having me. I've loved chatting with you, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you.